Hello and welcome to the Univ North Docuseries, a new series of videos created by the Development Office here at Univ to showcase some of the wonderful work that has been happening in order to bring Univ North to life. In episode 1, we're going to hear from a range of people, all speaking from different perspectives. They're going to be talking about the origins of the project and the impact it's going to have on college life. And of course, none of this would have been possible without the extraordinary generosity of over 600 donors, old members, friends, and supporters of the college. We remain so grateful to all of them for their vision and encouragement, which have helped to ensure that Univ North became a reality and part of the college's estate.
Four years ago, Sophie and I got a tour from Sir Ivor Crewe, and you had already drawn the design and architectural plans, but there was an absence of a key funding piece. And it was in this spot that Sophie and I conceived the idea of creating a joint venture, if you will, between University College and University of Pittsburgh. And so Sophie wanted to be back here because she was the one who had urged me to think about how to make that happen.
Well, I think it's fair to say that I was involved in developing the project from the very start. It became a very important part of my life as master of the college. I felt from the start very committed to the idea of establishing not only a new college community on the Fairfield site, but a new kind of college community. So I worked with others in the college to devise a plan, to identify what we thought college students and fellows would want, not only immediately, but over the rest of the century. I knew that we would need to raise very substantial funds, and I regarded myself as the chief fundraiser for Univ North. I also knew that the college would need the support not only of the fellowship, but also of its most influential and generous old members if the project was to succeed. And so I chaired a group, a working party, that brought together representatives of governing body, the key senior officers of the college, and representatives of the old membership.
North Oxford, historic, quiet and beautiful. And just here, between the Woodstock and Banbury roads, something new is taking shape.
I think it will bring us into the 21st century. I think we're one of the colleges who's investing heavily in what the student population wants, what the student population needs, and just the fact that the college is switched on to what it actually needs to be able to provide for students of the future.
Univ North is such an exciting addition to the college's portfolio, both in terms of its student provision, but also in terms of the academic and social opportunities it's going to bring with it. It's just so exciting to be part of the project, which is anticipating the emerging needs of Univ students, both in terms of how they want to work, but also in terms of how they want to live going into the 21st century. Having beautiful, well-equipped rooms, which are great to work in, which are great to live in, which have access to fabulous communal and cooking and socialising spaces, all set within a large, sustainable, landscaped site in which people can spend time together, they can take breaks from their work, they can invite their friends from other colleges and other parts of the community into the site. It's going to be such a wonderful opportunity to live and work in new ways.
To understand the future of Univ North, we have to begin with the land itself and a bold idea that turned a site into a story.
The idea of Univ North came about as a result of Fairfield House and its very considerable garden becoming available on the property market. This was mentioned to me by our estates-person at the time, Frank Marshall. All that the college was interested in was the prospect of buying the land, including Fairfield House, which was right next to our staff site, and merging the two estates so that we had, for the future development of Univ, this very large tract of land stretching all the way from the Woodstock Road to the Banbury Road. There were a number of house builders who were very interested in obtaining the Fairfield site and were in a position to offer more money for it than the college could afford. So it's very much to our estate bursar's credit that he managed to persuade the Fairfield charity to sell it to Univ for somewhat less than they might have obtained from a house builder. Once we knew that we would secure the land, we started to think about what we would use it for.
The vision and the intention around the use of the Univ North site, which is a stretch of land between Woodstock Road and Banbury Road to the west and east, and Rawlinson Road and Staverton Road to the south and north, that box of land needed to have a master plan.
We weren't sure that we wanted to develop it at all in the first few years. We thought we would just simply hold on to the site and wait until we had a clear idea as to what we might do with it, and were able to raise the funds to develop the site. We also thought, to start off with, that if we did develop it, it would be in stages. It would be incrementally. We would perhaps put up one new building or a couple of new buildings and then wait a few years before we developed it further. But gradually, as a result of discussions within the college, between the estates bursar, our senior tutor Andrew Bell, our domestic bursar, and of course fellows in the college, we decided that we would go full tilt and establish a new college community on the site. One of the factors that persuaded us to do this was a conference that we held with some of our benefactors or prospective benefactors, mainly old members, who persuaded the college that if it wanted to raise funds for the development of Fairfield site, it would be easier to do this if we had a grand master plan for what we wanted to do than if we tried to raise funds just for one building and then a few years later for another building.
The goal was never simply development. It was to create a space that respects its history, serves future generations, and meets the evolving needs of Univ's community.
When I first came back to Univ as senior tutor, the Univ North idea was in its early days of development, and it was one of the most exciting things that was happening in any college in Oxford at the time. For me, as someone who has a particular role for the academic life of the college and the things that support its academic community, it seemed to be a fantastic opportunity to think about who we were, what we were really about, what we valued, and crucially what we wanted to enable in the way that students lived and worked and learned and interacted with the wider community of the collegiate university. It's really delivered all of those ambitions in spades, and I simply can't wait to see how the next generation of students are going to occupy the site and what they're going to make it for themselves.
The Univ North project did matter to me personally. I felt very committed to it. And the main reason was that I saw this as an opportunity for the college to develop in ways that otherwise would not be possible. This was the largest expansion of the college's footprint for over 300 years. It clearly marked a very important historical point in the college's development.
After months of presentations and debate, Neil McLaughlin architects were chosen to imagine not just buildings, but a living site.
One of the interesting things is that as an architect, when I looked at the project first of all, I thought we'd be putting lots of buildings on this site, but it will be primarily about landscape. It'll be primarily about gardens, and what the buildings have to do are to make a simple frame for those gardens. And so when I think about my favourite bits of the project, it's almost little bits of orchard or small ponds there's a little pavilion overlooking a pond, small things like that, which are about the way in which people would come out of their rooms and be in these gardens and feel that they were open to meeting other people. There's a sense of sociability and to take advantage of this really mature planting. So the idea of sitting under one of those grand specimen trees that we already have on the site, but finding yourself surrounded by nice new buildings and other people that you know, being part of a community, that's really what I think about positively about the scheme.
Every design element, from residential layout to green space, was examined through the lens of student life, sustainability and neighbour relations.
The college was originally almost entirely an undergraduate college, but times were changing and the university clearly saw its future in an expansion of its graduate numbers. It was a struggle for the college to admit a large number of graduate students, and in particular to offer graduate students the accommodation and other facilities that they would expect. The Fairfield site offered the college the chance to do that. So that was one of the reasons that I was very committed to it. This was a large site in a prime residential area of Oxford. It clearly wasn't possible for the college to replicate the main site there and to offer students exactly the same kind of experience that they have here on the high street. But there was here an opportunity to offer our students a different kind but equally valuable experience, which was to be much more integrated into the local community, not only because they would be living in North Oxford, essentially in a residential suburb, but because they would be sharing this site with the new Fairfield residential home for the elderly, and also with a nursery which was something that the fellowship very much wanted, was part of the plan from the very beginning.
The task for taking the master plan into a refined state was very much the exercise for 2018, with a series of options analyses and deeper inquiries into exactly what was it that the college was looking for in terms of its client brief, matured through the insights of those architects that had contributed to the design competition but not won the job, as well as Neil and his team's perspectives on how the whole site may be developed for student residential accommodation and more.
External input was essential. The college wasn't building in isolation, it was building in partnership with the wider community.
When Univ announced its plan to build student accommodation and other facilities on what was effectively a green site, and understandably the local neighbourhood was nervous and anxious. They didn't particularly relish the idea of more buildings going up on what was a lovely garden, and there were concerns about what it would mean for traffic around the area and so forth. I'm very much hoping that Univ North will come to be regarded as a natural part of the North Oxford community. I think having the nursery there and sharing the site with the Fairfield Residential Home will contribute to that. I'm pretty confident that the quite natural fears that were expressed by members of the local community when the project was announced will come to be seen as having been unwarranted and unnecessary.
Through the end of 2018 and into 2019, we then kicked off the design process through the various stages of design evolution.
And through each challenge, the vision held to provide high quality student accommodation, shared facilities and room for Univ's future.
After a rapid assessment of the options, we moved forward into quite purposeful design for the site. And that purposeful design has to be tested with the neighbours as vital stakeholders in all of this, as well as tested amongst the fellowship and our members here at college. As we took this forward, the City Council demands Oxford Design Review panels come in to interrogate the design and to challenge it. We had 2 Oxford Design Review panels previewed by public consultations, one in June 2019 and one in October 2019, as the design was truly scrubbed down, if you'll pardon the phrase, and challenged from every direction.
Today, Univ North is rising, brick by brick, scaffold by scaffold, into a space that will reshape the college's future.
At one level, his compelling design was one that had very much the reflection of the Victorian suburb conservation area. The Arcadian villas and gardens perspective, which is very much the style of the buildings around, was clear in the core of the design. But it was arranged around open quadrangles. It was arranged around the sunny disposition and southern facing. It was arranged around landscape and quiet spaces and busy spaces and student spaces and areas that one could imagine, whatever one's persuasion, mood, temperament or whatever, there would be a place for you at Univ North. And that seemed to me, and seemed to many of my colleagues on the Univ North Working Party, to be an utterly compelling proposition and a basis for us to move forward.
That has been a very important part of the design. I don't think you can build the buildings without thinking about the landscape that they're going to be in. The site itself has almost dictated some of that because of the orchard that's already there. That really is quite special.
This is a complex site with the renovation of existing buildings alongside new buildings erected from scratch. And the challenges of getting that done in a way that was affordable and didn't expose the college to some unpleasantness with respect to cost overruns became a very serious driving force for the efforts of all parties on the team.
Alongside design excellence, sustainability has been one of the defining values of Univ North.
I think it's vitally important. I mean, I would imagine it's probably the biggest landscaping development in the area currently and for many years to come. So I mean, I think Univ has really sort of taken the bull by the horns to realise what everyone needs for a community, and green space is an integral part of that.
I think for a lot of the students who live up there, the garden is going to be the thing that provides the most wonderful opportunities, in that they'll be able to take fresh air, breaks from their work, but also the site's being curated so carefully by our gardens and grounds team that there's always going to be something to look at, always something to feel part of, and you'll know that you're living within a community which is breathing, which references its historic past, but which is mindful of our obligations of sustainability to the future.
So yeah, sustainability has been a huge part of developing the Univ North site. My ethos has been to create a garden which is both beautiful for the college, but also beneficial for wildlife. And this means doing several things really when you're planning the site. We've been sourcing plants from nurseries which have used peat-free growing mediums. We've been concentrating on having the longest bloom sequence as we can. What we mean by that is plants which are in flower from early spring to late winter. This gives the maximum food source for pollinators over the course of the year. Another thing we've been doing is creating habitat. So Univ North will have large areas of mixed native meadow. This is great over the summer, so you'll have all the flowers for the insects, and also over winter it'll be a really good cover crop. So small animals and birds, insects can all use it for overwintering. So part of Univ North is to have a large kind of landscape scale garden. So we'll have lots of native trees within that. So we've got Scots pine, field maple, walnut, beech, and these are fantastic biodiversity kind of trees. So you have huge amounts of wildlife which benefit from them, as well as the ornamental trees going in the site. So another thing with creating habitat is planting mixed native hedging. What do we mean by that is planting 5 or more species within the hedgerow. So that's things like blackthorn, hawthorn and field maple. This is great for habitat for birds and mammals, but it's also a really good food source because it has berries, flowers and nuts in it throughout the year. So yeah, a really positive thing to be putting in more hedgerows back within an urban landscape. And these are just some of the things we've been doing for sustainability for the Univ North.
Timber, sustainably sourced and rapidly renewable, became part of the wider principle: carbon sequestered, not carbon embodied.
In terms of implementation, the design of the superstructure for all the new buildings was in cross-laminated timber. That is, it's a wooden plywood panel, if you like, a structural plywood panel, some 4 or 5 inches thick. And this is prefabricated off-site, brought to site and fitted into place as a giant jigsaw. It's had the beauty of being very controlled from the point of view of construction, but importantly, it has a number of architectural and sustainability features which are very attractive. We have sequestered carbon rather than embodied carbon, and that fabric first idea, that concept of going forward with careful selection of fabrics, careful selection of materials to minimise the impact on the environment is embodied within the whole implementation and construction of Univ North.
I think having more students in a community will benefit some of the students because they'll feel less isolated, and I think some of them who live out at the moment, not in college accommodation, get a bit isolated from the college community. So I think having people here would be good.
That's what Univ North will change: a unified home for our Univ community, built with connections and continuity in mind.
Students who live up at the North Oxford site will have access to a cafe, to dining facilities, to sports, to recreation, to practice and rehearsal space, but also, crucially, to each other. The site is designed so that they can live and work and intermingle both with themselves, but also with the other users who are there, the residential care home and the nursery. And I think in all of the little incidental and serendipitous ways that arise, that's going to mean so much to people who are living and working there through what are, after all, very busy term times and research periods.
Not a replacement for the high street, but a partner to it.
One of the remarkable steps that the fellowship here has taken since I was an undergraduate here in 1977 is that the first years reside here on High Street. The second years go out to sites elsewhere, and then the third years come back to High Street site for a bit of tender loving care in the approach to finals. One of the complaints that we've had is that today we've not been able to accommodate the entire second year group in one location. What Univ North does for us, most fundamentally in my view, is that it provides a single site, ultimately, on which the entire second year group might reside together. We've moved the old Stavatonia from a dormitory site to Univ North as a very comprehensive and complementary site to this one here on the High Street. We're not looking to replace or provide an alternative location. but instead a complementary site which will work hand in hand with the high street in a way that hopefully will be to the pleasure and joy of all students coming here in the years and decades ahead.
I don't always talk about this, but I was a student myself at Univ in the early 1990s, and I really valued the chance to live out at what we all called stavs at the time. It was great to be in an environment which was a bit different from the town centre site. There was a bit more space, there was a bit more air. In some ways, there was a bit more privacy for not being in the midst of the town centre. And I think it really allowed us, as a group of students, both to interact with each other differently, but also to occupy a different relationship with our work. And I hope very much that our students today and tomorrow and in future years who live up at the new Univ North will themselves be able to experiment with different ways of living and different ways of working, and perhaps also developing a different relationship with the city of Oxford, one which I know will stay with them, hopefully for the rest of their lives.
I think Univ North will affect the college community in three ways. First of all, quite simply, I think it will enable the college to attract able and talented students, both undergraduates, even more so graduates, because it is offering a really lovely environment in which to live and study. Secondly, I'm hoping that the Univ North site, which will be shared by graduates and undergraduates, will bring graduates and undergraduates a little closer together, at least to the extent that undergraduates will have a better idea of what graduate life is like and what is involved in being a graduate. I think it's quite important that undergraduates and graduates regard themselves as being part of one college community. And then thirdly, I think what Univ North will mean for Univ is that after our students leave the college and enter into careers, instead of having just one memory of their experience at Univ, which will be their experience as undergraduates living on the main site, living in the centre of Oxford, and all of what that involves, they will in fact think of Univ in two ways, not one way. There will be their high street experience and there'll be their North Oxford experience, and they'll be very different, but they'll both be very distinctive to Univ.
I'm very excited to make use of Univ North's new modern facilities, such as the gym and the cafe. I think it will give me a good perspective on life in Oxford, on my studies, and on working together with my year group. I'm very grateful to everyone who's supported the project, and that's why I'm so excited to move in October.
It's been a particular pleasure for me to continue a project, Univ North, which is going to be transformational for our college. It gives us the opportunity to offer all of our students the ability to stay in college for their 3 or 4 years of undergraduate education, and to do the same for our graduates. It's about bringing our community together. It is about giving our students and our staff the opportunity to work in two very different kinds of places. A huge thank you to our donors, particularly to our foundation donor, David Frederick, who has been so supportive of this project with his wife, Sophia Lynn. And in addition, the over 600 other old members who have given us support. It's really brought our community together. And the great thing is, we will be contributing to sustainability. We have historic orchards on the site. We will be giving the opportunity to our students to learn so much more that goes beyond their academic subjects and picks up on a variety of things. And the most exciting thing for me is the opportunity of generations beginning to live and work together, understanding each other, with a community that has a nursery, accommodation for students, and also a care home on one site. What a great thing for Univ to be doing.
Univ North is still rising, a visionary multi-generational site in progress. The foundations are in place, in purpose, in planning and in principle.
To be in a community where there will be multi-generations that will have access to this spot is just amazing. And I'm excited by having children interact with nature here and having older people be able to find this as a place of refuge and contemplation. So it's very special. That's great. Thank you for making sure it will be saved here.
In our next episode, we'll explore the design that's guiding every beam and brick and hear how architecture brings the vision of Univ North to life.
Thank you for making sure it'll be saved. It's very nice to see that when we're involved in the creativity of making the building, there's a whole other kind of creativity going on in terms of actually providing the means to make it happen. So it sounds like a fantastic event.
It is a wonderful thing of having a lot of very smart people who are well-intentioned come together to achieve something that will long last all of us.
I hope you enjoyed watching episode 1 of the Univ North docuseries and learning more about the largest expansion of the college since the 17th century. Look out for episode 2, where we'll take you behind the scenes and show you more about the buildings and the people behind the construction. If you have any feedback or would like to ask a question, please do email us on the address shown on your screens now. Thank you for watching.